across material that showed, I think it's called the car wash. The car wash. Members of the Brazilian government of Bolsonaro were basically trying to, I don't know the full details of the case. I tried to, but there was so much corruption going on, and he exposed it. Yeah. Meetings with his attorneys, right? So that breaks a fundamental legal principle of confidentiality between a client and on a technicality, from a purely legal point of view, the case should be thrown out of court.
I don't have much regard for
Free Julian Assange. Stand up for the truth.
Goes way back to the Magna Carta. Right, back in 12, London. Have you ever seen the film To Kill a Mockingbird? You've never seen that. Oh, you've got to watch it. But there's a great line in there, right? There's a great line that every person is innocent until proven guilty, right? We assume innocence, right? But the greater the crime which is alleged, the greater is the defence which is required in order to be able to reject those charges, if those charges have any veracity at all.
I think so. I'm taking it as a reaction to my desire to stand on the steps.
It's nothing to do with access to the
No.
town hall.
Every week they come and tell us to get off the stairs. We have no right to be here. And every week I tell them, yes, we do have a right to stand here. And this week they've decided.
bring your rates notice with you.
Well, this week they've decided to barricade the steps off and claim that it's because it's closed for event rehearsal. But quite clearly it's serving no purpose other than to stop us standing on the steps and pursuing our legal right to protest on these stairs. I recently reviewed the heritage order for this building, and they mentioned the most important part of this building historically is these steps are the foundation of all the great protests in Australian history. So, we have a historically registered right to be on these steps. So here I am, pushing the barrier back. And it looks like we've got a bit of amplification here to make our point today.
Just grab it. Whichever one suits your personality. Stop talking corruption sounds good.
Free Julian Assange!
Yeah, the walls are definitely closing in on journalists throughout the world as well, with Glenn Greenwald being charged for cybercrimes just I think it was yesterday. US government's just come out and said that any foreign journalist can't use the First Amendment anymore. It's all right for them to go out and hunt down journalists and all that sort of stuff, but if they get brought back to America, like the precedence this will set with Assange, if he gets extradited, they'll be able to get other journalists as well, and they won't be able to use the First Amendment over there. Total farce.
So their law applies overseas and it doesn't apply overseas.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
It depends. They can choose which way they want it.
Yeah. So who gave them the right to change those laws? They just seem to do whatever they want. Was it CIA or who knows? I don't know. Free Julian Assange.
Oh, that he...
Hope they come across
Here's
the
some
road.
handouts here.
Hello, everybody. We're here protesting the incarceration of Julian Assange.
exposing the government war crimes. We want you all to know, Julian Assange is a political prisoner, Australian citizen, completely denied any kind of protection or anyone to speak for him from the Australian government. They've been completely tacit. And, he's exposed war crimes, he's not a criminal, he's exposed criminals. If you want to win wars, we've got to let whistleblowers tell us what the government's doing in secret that we ought to know for the sake of our democracy and our liberty and our freedoms. I'm going to introduce Pedro.
Julian Assange is a journalist who revealed crimes committed by Australian and American governments in Iraq and Afghanistan. Journalists are being punished for revealing crimes. That's why Julian Assange is in prison facing extradition to the United States. It's also why Glenn Greenwald is being charged for crimes, revealing crimes of the Brazilian government. It also explains why Edward Snowden is in exile in Russia for revealing criminal activity by the American government against its own population in the form of mass surveillance of the population's activities and the storing of information. It also explains why Chelsea Manning, the source for WikiLeaks, is currently in prison, facing $1,000 a day in expenses because she revealed the crimes committed by America in Iraq. And today they are planning more wars, more criminal acts against the people of the world. That's why journalism is being suppressed. We need to liberate journalism. We need to free the truth. And we need to use that truth to be able to stop criminal acts by our own governments. Free Julian Assange, free journalism. Free.
Ladies and gentlemen, we're here because we believe Julian Assange should be set free and brought back to Australia and all charges against him dropped. He has not committed any crimes under the Australian laws. He's not committed any crimes under international laws, and he is being held in England as a political prisoner. He's never been accused of being a rapist by any women on this earth.
They will never charge him.
He's never been charged. The media said he's a rapist. They've lied to you. They lied about the wars. They've lied about wars for the last 50 years, and we have to stop them, and we have to free journalists to tell the truth.
Hello, how you all doing? Just like to say we've all suffered in the last few months with the fires and stuff, but most of all we've really suffered with a lack of leadership. Leadership is something a country deserves. It's what we pay for. We pay good money, we pay good taxes, we employ people that we should have respect for. The people we've employed lately have no respect for us, no respect for our citizenry, and no respect for our people overseas. If any of the Bali 9, for example, had committed that crime with a German passport, none of them would have been shot. Okay? We don't protect our own, we never have, and with this government we never will. We have to protect each other from foreign governments. And whether we like Hollywood or not, America is a foreign government. We don't send our children there to be placed under arrest for something that they have possibly done somewhere else. We look after our own people, we look after our own children, we look after our own families. We do not need a foreign power to look after us. This is what we've been subjected to, and this will continue as long as we allow Scott Morrison and a team of apes to run this country. We can see how they've dealt with the fires very badly. People have suffered incalculably. They are still suffering. No one is receiving money from the charities or from the government. Our people overseas are languishing in prisons because our government has failed to govern. We have to get rid of them once and for all. Meanwhile, Julian Assange needs you now. We need the truth now. Without whistleblowers, we don't know what's happening. The press are quietly hiding in the back rooms because they're afraid of government. We cannot, as a people, go through life being afraid of our own government. So let's stick together, work together, and bring home our people overseas languishing in prisons for no other purpose than telling the truth about foreign crimes. Okay, thank you.
That's why journalists are being persecuted. That's why Julian is being persecuted. Free Julian Assange. Prevent his extradition to the United States where he pays 175 years in prison.
We've got a bit of news for you here, everybody. The New South Wales Council for Civil Liberties, which was an organisation was formed in the 60s to protect the citizens against excesses of police and other public officials who act wrongfully and cruelly toward the citizens. And they're a very important organisation. They're nearly all barristers and lawyers and judges, and many of the members there become judges, and they do reports to government and local, state government and international government. They passed a resolution. The New South Wales Council for Civil Liberties has just passed a resolution which says the New South Wales Council for Civil Liberties calls upon the Australian government to work to bring Julian Assange back to Australia and support his efforts to resist extradition to the United States. And that notion has been carried by the Councils for Civil Liberties, which is a very important citizens organisation, a highly credible organisation. Every citizen ought to know the government is acting corruptly and they're not going to protect the Australian citizen. They're not acting in our interests. There's corrupt behaviour in the government. They've lied us into a bunch of wars, and we have to stop this crazy situation of them locking up people on trumped up charges. There's a lot of very important people, including ex-judges, lawyers, criminal Queen's Counsel barristers, artists, scientists, educated people that are very much opposed to what's going on with regard to Assange being held in custody based on false charges. As an Australian citizen, he should be protected by the Australian government. He is not being protected by the Australian government, just as they did with Hicks, who unfortunately Dick Smith and a number of businessmen saw the injustice and helped him get out of custody overseas. The Australian government has been completely tacit, or they're saying that, you know, making false accusations about him being a rapist, which has never been charged for after being in prison.
Independent member for Clark, Andrew Wilkie, stated in Parliament Canberra recently, yes, Julian Assange is a controversial figure, but he is an Australian citizen and must be treated like any other Australian. He was not in the US when he provided evidence of US war crimes in Iraq. He can't possibly have broken their laws. If Assange is indeed extradited to the US, he faces serious human rights violations, including exposure to torture and a dodgy trial. And this has serious implications for freedom of speech and freedom of the press here in Australia. Because if we allow a foreign country to charge an Australian citizen for revealing war crimes, then no Australian journalist or publisher can ever be confident that the same thing won't happen to them. The man's an Australian, he's not an American, and he wasn't in the US when he spoke out about US war crimes. Put simply, Julian Assange must be allowed to return to Australia. Thank you, Andrew Wilkie, for urging the federal government to do more to allow Julian Assange to return to Australia.
Bravo, that's Member of Parliament for about the last 8 years, ex-intelligence officer, Andrew Wilkie, who heroically exposed the government's lies prior to us invading Iraq There was about 150,000 of us here demonstrated saying, do not invade Iraq. Now they're telling us it was a mistake because they were mistaken about weapons of mass destruction. Andrew Wilkie came out originally and told us they were lying right from the onset. They still invaded Iraq based on a bunch of lies. They killed approximately 1 million people there, destroyed the country, all for what reason? For what good's been done for anybody except the war profiteers? Anyway, it's very important that we all stand together and say we have to bring Assange home. He's an Australian citizen, and as Australian citizens we need to stand together when our government is acting wrongfully.
Oh, hello mums and dads, hello young people of Sydney. We are here to talk about Julian Assange and particularly about the espionage that has been committed against Julian Assange. That's my topic today. Did you know that Julian Assange and everyone who met with him was secretly spied day and night over 3 years by a security company working for the CIA while he lived in the Ecuadorian embassy in London? That is 3 years, day and night, 24 hours a day. Julian Assange was spied on by a company paid by the CIA, and that was before the charges were laid against Julian Assange. His meetings were secretly recorded, videotaped, and passed on to the CIA from 2015 until late 2018. The security firm UC Global was working for the CIA and secretly planted microphones and cameras inside the Ecuadorian embassy in London. And that included in Julian's bedrooms, in the bathrooms, and underneath fire extinguishers around the embassy. Imagine living in those conditions yourself as an Australian that was an asylee and protected by international law at the time. These people, paid by the CIA, recorded and videotaped Assange's meetings. They collected information on every visitor that he had. They took apart and photographed the cell phones of American journalists. Also, they broke into those visitors' laptops. Then they downloaded the contents of the laptops onto a server, and they gave unrestricted access to that server to the CIA. They also selected people around Julian Assange, his network of support, as high priority targets. That's what they were called, high priority targets. And that included Julian Assange's doctors, lawyers from the UK, lawyers from Australia, Spain, lawyers from France. They even collected information on Julian Assange's children and everyone else who tried to secure Assange's freedom. Spying also included, in a bizarre manner, collecting DNA from a baby who visited Assange to see whether that baby was Julian Assange's son. This security company working for the CIA passed on also information about the width, the thickness of Julian Assange's bedroom walls, so that the Americans could listen by directing listening devices from outside the embassy. We are talking about a campaign of espionage that went on for over 3 years, fully paid by the CIA and accepted by the UK, and who knows, perhaps accepted by the Australian government. The man in charge of this espionage, Morales, was getting 200,000 euros per month for his dirty job. Julian was a protected person under international law at the time. His rights have been gravely violated, and the UK courts must not grant an extradition in these circumstances. We want Julian free.
We'd like you all to know that we're here on Friday afternoons at 5:30 every Friday afternoon. Please come and join us. We're hoping one day there'll be 100,000 people here and the government will actually start to do something.
Senator Wilson has said the following about Julian Assange and the publication of the WikiLeaks files. There have been accusations that WikiLeaks and Assange merely dumped material online. I have been reminded that WikiLeaks withheld a full third of the Afghan files to protect individuals, that Assange himself redacted tens of thousands of names from the Iraq files, and that Cablegate was only made available due to reckless publication of the password by the newspaper The Guardian.
Good afternoon. My name is Karen Hemming. I'm an Australian citizen like Julian Assange. I'd like to read out some comments by Andrew Wilkie. I'm hopeful we can build a parliamentary alliance and a public campaign to bring Julian Assange home to Australia. Whatever people may think of him, he is an Australian citizen and has rights. And journalism is not a crime, nor espionage. Remember that the current extradition charges relate to WikiLeaks stories that won them multiple international journalism prizes, including the Australian Walkley Awards in 2011.
Senator Peter Whish-Wilson from this parliamentary group recently presented a petition to the Senate with more than 200,000 signatures calling on the government to intervene and ensure Assange's safe passage to Australia and to use its influence to ensure he is not extradited. Andrew Wilkie has said that the group wants Assange to return to Australia. We all have different views about Assange personally, but everyone is of the one mind that he should be allowed to return to Australia and that he should not be extradited to the United States to face espionage charges.
Some words from Bob Carr, the former Foreign Affairs Minister under Julia Gillard. So Bob Carr has also come in support of Julian Assange and why he should not be extradited to the US. Bob Carr has indicated that Julian Assange is in fact a political prisoner. Carr has said, first and foremost, the present condition of Julian Assange needs to be addressed. I think it's as brutally simple as this. If he were, God prevent, to die in prison, then the finger will be pointed with total justification at the political leaders who've allowed him to be in maximum security, with intermittent access to his legal representatives and denied access to the papers he wants to prepare his defence. I want to send a message to my friends in London to think carefully about holding a political prisoner like this in maximum security and think of how you might be held responsible should the worst happen.
You have probably all heard the expression that the truth is the first casualty of war. Yes. Have you heard that one before? Yes. Yes? Put your hand up if you have. Yes. Put your hand up if you've heard that truth is the first casualty of war. What does that mean? It means that wars are started on the basis of lies. Yes. And therefore, when they go to war, they are lying to you. So if you find a journalist who tells the truth, well, that journalist is going to be marked man and enemy number one as far as the government is concerned. And that's exactly where we find Julian Assange.
You all know that the Liberal Party will not speak to get Assange justice. The Labor Party will not speak to get Assange justice. The Greens will not speak to get Australia justice. If you vote for these parties, you're voting for the oppression of an individual citizen that exposes government crimes against humanity.
Yeah. And what did the President of Mexico say? I think he's supportive of Julian Assange.
Yeah. Americans hate Mexico, don't they?
Yeah, I suppose they do.
Yeah.
They want to build a wall.
Look, Trump called every Mexican a criminal. I mean, you know.
So I'm up there with
Julian has published information that may have been sensitive in the United States. but he wasn't in the United States when he published it, nor is he a citizen of the United States. So I question how someone can fall foul of a law when they are not a citizen or resident of that country.
This just isn't about Julian Assange either. This is about everybody's freedom of speech. Everybody has to get in contact with their local MPs. Do whatever you can. Send emails. Bring up your local members. Get in contact with them and say that you're not standing for this. You don't want your government putting down Julian Assange. Stand up for Julian Assange. Stand up for the truth. Stand up for freedom of speech.
You're being lied to by the media, you're lied to by the government. We're going to wake up. You believe the government when it comes to Assange, you believe the media. They lied us into the Iraq war, they've lied us about Syria, they've killed millions of people over recent years. Millions and millions of innocent people killed with aerial bombardment. And when the truth comes out, they want to destroy anybody that comes out and exposes their crimes against humanity. We have to stop persecution of whistleblowers. We have to stop free speech being suppressed. We have to make governments, all governments, accountable for crimes against humanity. When it's our own governments, they should be accountable. We should be prosecuting all public officials that are guilty of crimes against humanity, domestic or foreign. We have to stop the wars. Citizens of the world have to stop governments dropping bombs on people.
Yeah. Great job, everyone. Good job. Good job.
Julian Assange is being tortured in a prison in London, the seat of democracy. What is our government doing about it? Nothing. What do we want? We want our government to do something about it.
Assange is being tortured by public officials in England based on trumped up charges that he's guilty of espionage against the Americans. He's not even an American citizen.
Where would we put this one?
The judge that has put Chelsea Manning in jail is an evil bastard. He's utterly evil, and he's been in jail now for about the last 2.5 years approximately.
They did, they went up to Lexington Court, they arrested They had to drop the charges, right? But he was arrested. There was honest reporting.
Yeah, fantastic. There are some good articles if you want to read it. Yeah.
We're here to share information about Julian Assange and what's happening in his trial for extradition in the UK. So yesterday there was a mention in one of the courts dealing with this trial, and the WikiLeaks person in charge has spoken about what he observed at that mention. And Hrafson, and my apologies for my pronunciation, Mr. Kristen Hrafson, the WikiLeaks editor-in-chief, said the following today about what happened yesterday in court. He said the following, that the US government is now claiming that foreign journalists don't get the benefit of the First Amendment of the US Constitution. And that amendment, to remind you, guarantees freedom of speech and freedom of the press. And the US had come out and said, well, no foreign journalist gets the protection of freedom of speech or freedom of the press. Too bad for them. If you are a journalist that embarrasses the US, surely you'll get charged for espionage or something similar. So, this is a bombshell revelation from WikiLeaks editor-in-chief, Kristen Hrafson. And now, he said that he had seen written submissions from the US government to the court, and they served those submissions on Julian Assange's defense lawyers, and they're part of the arguments that the US will provide in support of the extradition of Julian Assange to the US. He said that this argument is totally outrageous. It's a position that exposes the true nature of the extradition case against Assange. The First Amendment states that Congress shall make no law abridging the freedom of speech or of the press or of the right of people to peacefully assemble and to petition the government for a redress of any grievances. So we should have no doubt whatsoever that Assange's prosecution is an attack against the free press and against the freedom of speech. It is against our right to force our government to be accountable for what they do with our tax dollars. Hrafson explained that this is especially dangerous for the US on the one hand to claim that foreign journalists are not guaranteed freedom of the press or freedom of the speech protection, and at the same time they are hunting down journalists all over the world. So this is the true nature of the extradition charges against Assange. What they want is to silence us, to silence journalists, to silence any citizen who wishes to keep their governments accountable. This should send a very clear message to all journalists about the importance of this case and about the true nature of this case. It is a political case against Assange. It is an attack on press freedom. If anybody ever had any doubt about it, this should erase all doubts. We should ask for Julian Assange's freedom, for our government to intervene immediately, as it has done in relation to other people that are in prison in Iran. They should send Minister Payne immediately to the UK to demand Julian Assange's freedom. Journalists in Australia should do exactly the same. Other parliamentarians, you good Australian citizens, please write to your parliamentarians and demand the freedom of Julian Assange. Thank you. These two ladies want you to send an email to everyone.
Yeah.
So can you write it down?
Yeah, of okay? Yes. My father's over there. Thank you so much.
No, this is, I'm really glad that you're doing this. This is amazing.
The thing is, you will also send me information about the doctors for Assange.
Okay.
Very important.
I will send you a link. There are a lot of good articles. And the letters also show you how to do online petition. So everything is in that link I'm going to send to you.
Beautiful.
Yeah. And write very neatly.
Oh, sure.
Ciao, bye. Free Julian Assange. Forward to the world socialist revolution.
Oh, there's one back up. You're doing the work first time.
Yeah, that's Karen.
That's fine. I was looking for that. Thank
Well, I
you
see
so much.
Karen with that sign.
Yeah, I want